providing for me.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Awesome Radio 106.9 on your FM dial. That's WBIS Awesome Radio on 24/7 for your entertainment and information. You're listening to Real Talk for Real Men. I'm Pastor Dan Lawson. I'm co host with Pastor Tremaine Forbes, who's not here. And we also have hosting with us. Give us your name.
Elder Nat Farrow.
Elder Nat Farrow. Well, thank you for being here today. And we bring you information that you really need to hear. We bring you real talk, the things that really matter in life. There's so much that comes into our ears and to our presence that really don't add any virtue or any value to our lives, but there are some eternal things, some spiritual things that we all need to be aware of. And this is Real Talk, bringing it to you every Thursday morning at 10 o'clock on Awesome Radio. Real Talk for Real Men. So, what do we got today, Elder? What do we want to offer?
Well, the preacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem, in his book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, says this. He says, wait a minute. I hit the wrong. He says, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven.
Everything, to everything.
To everything.
There is a season. Everything. That's powerful there.
Well, that's it's. I just think we need to explore that because a lot of times a lot of folks don't understand that. They think things just happen, and we don't understand that at different times things happen, and we need to understand how to deal with different things in different seasons.
Well, I remember, when there was this game that my son used to play. Started out with like Pac-Man and that kind of thing, and you know how those games are. And sometimes it will. There's a thing that will flash on the screen, and when this particular flash comes on the screen, that means your guy in the game now has superpower. I don't know if you played any games like that, but there are things you can do when that thing is flashing that you can't do when it's not flashing. And that kind of lends itself to the point that there's a season. And I look back over my life, and there are seasons in my life where there were things that I could accomplish, and there were seasons in my life where I was limited about certain things. Continue to expound on that, because I think that's real important right there.
Well, I think that's true, and a lot of times we don't recognize it when it's happening.
That's true.
A lot of times we look back on it and say, "Oh, okay,
yeah,
now I understand it. Now I get it."
Yeah.
But this whole time thing, this whole issue of time, as the wise man looked at it, he was dissecting it. He was saying, wait a minute, this has been like this. God set this up. I believe God set time up for us because he lives in eternity. He's outside of time. But when he created this, where we are, he put time in. And so it's something else we have to manage. I remember looking. I used to read a lot of business books, and one of the big deals, even in business and even in life, is managing time. You have to learn how to manage your time
Time
and
management.
priorities, and So I don't know what you think.
Well, I think there's another good analogy here. When you look at the farmer has to understand seasons. He can't just wake up any morning during the year and say, you know what, I think I'll plant something today. No, a farmer knows better than that. He knows that there are seasons for planting and there's seasons for harvesting. And you can't mix them up. You can't trade them off. You can't say, well, you know what, I'm going to plant in this season, even though I know it's not the right season. I'm going to plant in this season because it works with my schedule. No, no, no. When God puts seasons in the earth that are fixed, and when you recognize those seasons, you acknowledge that you got to work with those seasons. I think that's the wisdom that Solomon is trying to convey to us here. You have to acknowledge that there's a time for every purpose. There's a season for everything, and you have to work with that if you want to be efficient and productive.
Well, that's how he starts this off. A time to be born. It's a set time. We may not know it and we may not understand it, but it's a set time to be born and a time to die. I love the way he does the contrast. And
Yeah,
then to your point, the next one is a time to plant and a time to pluck up. Farmers understand this because one of the things that does is gives you patience. you, you can't rush it.
nah,
The corn ain't gonna come before it's time.
that's right.
You know what I'm saying? So in the meantime, you need to do something else while you waiting for that to come up.
Find something else to do.
So I think it's something we can trivialize it, but when we understand it, it helps us to better manage what we do. And I think that's one of the things that that he's trying to that he's letting us know, and that we have to understand that some things, and I think this is one of the things Jesus talked about. He said, "Be anxious for nothing." You don't have any control. See, there's certain things we don't have control over. I
Yeah,
know we like to be in control, but there's certain things you don't have control over. There's set times. There's set seasons for it. Your hair's gonna grow. See, yours grow. You got a bunch, but then there's other folk don't have none, and you ain't got nothing to do with it, unless you get you some of that stuff Walt Frazier was selling.
yeah. Yeah, I remember Jesus told his disciples when they were very anxious about the end times, about well, not necessarily the end times, but their mindset was that Jesus was going to restore the kingdom of Israel like it was when David was in charge. They were expecting that to happen right there, that he was going to overthrow the Romans, and they were going to be able to kick them to the curb and all that kind of stuff. And that's when Jesus said to them, it is not for you to know the times and the seasons that the Father has put into his own hands. I don't have that scripture right in front of me, but I remember that's what it said. There's some times and seasons that you're not going to understand. So you can. There's no need of speculating about it. And I see a lot of people do that when it comes to the book of Revelations, when it comes to preaching eschatology, end times, all that kind of stuff. They speculate on things that they don't understand. And there are some times and seasons that's not given to us to understand. Not yet.
I think it's a whole lot of them, and I think that's the whole point. Is that when you understand these times are there, not to worry.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that that's really what it comes down to, not to worry, but to trust God.
Yeah. God's got it all under control.
Because you're not gonna know. You just won't know. Um, you're supposed to plan, and you should plan. And a lot of times, though, when you plan, life happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
We all
and
know
so,
that.
huh?
We all know about that.
Yeah. And so now you got to adjust your plan.
But
And,
a good plan is when you're able to, sometimes through knowledge, sometimes through past experience, you're able to acknowledge seasons, when you put your plan together, because if you can do that, you can make a better plan and you'll have fewer catastrophes or surprises if you understand the seasons that's going to happen, while you're planning over time.
you also plan. Um, I remember reading somewhere. You plan for things that could go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't just plan for the good stuff. You plan for the bad. It's funny. We're talking about this, and then we're looking at this stuff going on with the documents and the ex-president and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And the thing that he was showing or allegedly showing off were plans. But they say that the military always does that. They got plans for every country.
Oh, yeah.
If we were to attack, how would we attack? Or how would we handle this? And they may never use that, but they set up the plan.
That's true. They got it for enemies and allies.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the things we have to look at too. Even in our daily, what happens if such and such happens or this happens? That's essentially what insurance is. That's really what it is.
Managing the risk.
Yeah. So I think this whole issue of time is an important one to
there's a
to look
time
at.
there's a time and a season to be in debt, and then there's a time and a season that you should make sure that you minimize your debts. Like right now, the interest rates are getting higher and higher. You should not be in a lot of debt right now. You should not be pursuing debt right now because the interest rates are rising. Over the last, I would say 5, 6, 7 years, the interest rate had remained low. I think it first went low after we came out of that crisis when Obama first became president, and he took on that crisis that was left by George W. Bush. Not saying it was Bush's fault. That's an argument for another day. But it was a crisis, bank bailouts and all that kind of stuff. And so soon after, all the things that they put in place to battle against that ended up in the feds lowering the rates. And they stayed low for a long period of time. And you could finance cars at 3% interest, and then some with no interest. But now, you're very fortunate if you can finance a car for 8% because the rates are going up so fast.
But see, people got used to that, and that wasn't normal.
No, it wasn't. That was not the normal. That was a season, and
Right, right,
all
right.
seasons come to an end. New seasons come in.
And people, I think what if people are honest, they'll understand that there's a season, but also there are other things that are going on to help you mitigate that. The fact that unemployment is low is good. Because can you imagine unemployment being high and
Oh,
still the rates are going
yeah,
up.
yeah,
Oh, you understand what I'm saying? So, we got to look at a lot of different things when it comes to managing the finances. But I think what this particular scripture is saying is showing us that we got to manage different things, all types of different things. There's it's a time to break down in verse 3, a time to build up. Sometimes it's time to save stuff.
yeah, yeah.
I know some folk that like to hoard stuff. They don't want to throw nothing away, but sometimes it's time to throw stuff
Oh
away.
yeah, there. Yep, yep. I agree with that 100%.
And I've seen in my family, I've seen it. Old folk, and a lot of folks come out of that era. It's funny. I know my aunt was like that. My mother's older sister, she's still living in 93, but um, her husband used to do that. He fixed his own tractors, and he was a farmer, but he would keep stuff. He had a whole back of barn full of stuff. You know what I'm saying? That he never used, but he would keep it. You know how people keep stuff? They say, well, I don't know. I'm going to keep this because it's still good. I might use it somewhere down the road. And the next thing you know, you got a whole barn full of stuff
Yeah, yeah,
that you ain't never seen. You don't even know what's in there. And he probably, well, he's going, he done passed away now, but if it hadn't burned down, he still had that barn full of stuff. But the thing is that you got to know sometimes it's time to let some stuff go.
yeah, yeah,
So it's funny when we think about it. I remember a guy came by. A guy was hunting, and he came by to see my granddad, and they lived down the road. But this guy shouldn't even been on the land. He looked in and seen something, and he wanted to know who owned the house and what he could do. And he came and seen granddad sitting right down there to his daughter. I was sitting there shaking my head. I said, he ain't getting nothing down there. You can kill that. So go ahead. But the point was, because she was the type of person that kept stuff. You know what I'm saying?
uh-huh.
So that was it's we just got to understand. Sometimes it's time to let stuff go, and that's true in our lives and even in our churches. We people, we can talk about this on the other side.
Yeah,
because sometimes you gotta let folk go.
yeah, yeah. Now that's a big discussion right there. We'll talk about that. But looking back to, I got some personal rules. When it comes to my clothing, looking in my closet, if there's something that I haven't used for a year, I've been through winter, I've been through summer, spring, fall, and I've not worn that thing, then there's a reason I haven't worn it. I don't like it or I don't need it. So I moved that to another closet, and that other closet is a closet where eventually that stuff is going to be put in a bag and given away or put on a yard sale or thrown away or whatever. My wife can go in that other closet anytime she wants. Anything she see in there, if she want to put it on a yard sale, she can do it because I've already moved it out of my cycle. It's out of season because I done been through 4 seasons and didn't wear it. So, you know, evidently I don't need it. Uh, and those are the kind of rules and kind of thoughts you have to have about everything that you're hoarding up. Otherwise, it just keep building up because you're always bringing new stuff in when you get it. You're always bringing more stuff. So if you're not getting rid of, the old stuff, you're just hoarding because it's gonna pile up. So we'll talk about getting rid of people when we come back after the break. But you're listening to Real Talk for Real Men, WBIS Awesome Radio, 106.9 FM on 24/7. You can tune in and hear the different variety of shows and presentations and information that's put on this broadcast. So we'll be right back after this break.
Does a public school have to help out a student with a Bible club? Stay tuned. You'll want to know this answer.
The Legal Alert. Here's attorney David Gibbs Jr.
The answer is yes. The public school has to help students with Bible clubs. Jared was a 10th grader and had just started a Bible club at his school with the help of our attorneys. The school had begrudgingly allowed the club access along with multiple other secular clubs. However, Jared was frustrated when the school refused to provide other resources for the club, citing separation of church and state. Our attorneys at the Christian Law Association were happy to step back in on Jared's behalf and let the school know that the Equal Access Act required the school to provide the student Bible club all of the same resources that they gave to any other club. Jared was entitled to and got all the resources he needed. He now has a thriving Bible club in the public schools.
You can speak to one of our legal missionary attorneys without charge 24 hours a day. Call 888-252-1969. That's 888-252-1969. Or if you prefer, 888-CLA-1969.
Hi, this is Monica of Journeys Transportation, and I listen to Awesome Radio.
Surely in the family, God is with me. Surely in the family, God is with me. Surely in the family, God is with me.
And we're back with you, Real Talk for Real Men. Awesome Radio, 106.9 FM on your dial. If you want to call in and be a part of our conversation, you can call in at 252-756-2008. Okay, Elder, let's continue in our discussion. Now, you mentioned dropping. I hear that all the time in people's sermons and teachings, and talking about dropping some people and letting some people go, time to move on, and, all that kind of stuff. What is that all about?
Well, I don't know if I should have went quite that far, went at it that way, but I think it's important for us to understand when seasons change in things that we do. You know what I'm saying? Or when God is moving us. A lot of times that season changing is God moving us from one place to another. Philip was evangelizing Samaria, preaching, folks was getting saved, and God said, hold up, I want you to go and meet this guy in the desert. I know I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what it was. He was moving him from that. Now, as the preacher, you had a revival. Folks, it's a lot of preachers wouldn't want to move.
Yeah, because that would be the atmosphere that they like, with all these crowds and crowds of people and all kind of manifestations. And
so you got to know when God is moving you, or it's time to move. And I think that's, that gets into a whole nother subject. I understand that. But it's something to be aware of. And as a pastor, I know you understand this, because this is what we were starting to talk about, is that everybody that comes to you and serves with you is not necessarily there for the long haul.
That's true.
They could be there just for, there's that word again, a season.
Yeah.
So you got to be wise enough to understand that. And when it's time for them to go, let them go.
So even in relationships, this can be seasonal.
Yeah.
Some of them. Not all of them.
Not the marriage, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Even though people have made it that way,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but
There are some
uh,
people, yeah.
but I think that there's something to be said about that whole idea of um. I think that was one of the problems that the early church had in Jerusalem. You know, they were happy in Jerusalem. Everything was building. The mega church was coming up. Great whole bunch of folk. Now we need deacons. And God was saying, that's not what I told you to do. I told you to go into all the world. All you doing is staying here in Jerusalem. So he didn't stop the persecution. And the persecution made him go.
Scattered them, yeah.
So I don't know. I think you got to recognize when the season is over and it's time to move.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we do know, but we don't want to move. We know it's time. I remember this, and this is true, and I'm gonna let you know. I'll let you get it. When I was at a fellowship, that changed. Pastor retired, changed, things changed. And I remember sister telling me everything was fine, but I knew it was time to go, but I couldn't just see it. And then something else happened. I think they got rid of the choir or something. And she said, it's time for me to go. Because that was kind of like a small group. But it's time for me to go. But she also told me, I knew it was time for me to go before. But I needed something else. It was like she needed something else to kind of push her. And so I just think, we got to look at these things, because a lot of times when you're moving, there's a reason for it that you need to move. You may be able to help somebody once you move.
Yes.
So I don't know what you think about all that.
Over my 45 years of ministry, I started out, doing evangelistic kind of work. I was in the streets. I was renting buildings and doing, different, gospel activities, showing gospel films, putting together gospel concerts to get people, exposed, getting young people exposed to Christ. And I was going all over. I wasn't in one place. I was in prison ministries all over Eastern North Carolina. And then after about 10 years of that, we opened up a building that we intended to do the same kind of things. We rent the building. We were intending to, show films, do outreach, that kind of thing. But it turned into a church ministry, and I became a pastor. And so for the next, several years, maybe 20 years, I did pastoral work. I mean, pastoral work is work. I mean, you're the one that's got to make sure the plumbing is working, the electrical stuff is right. I mean, you got to be there. The people come to church and they hear the message and then they go home. But you got to make sure everything is right so that they can come back and, and have a good setting, a good atmosphere to learn and to be edified and to grow spiritually. So I was a hands-on pastor for about 20 years, and now I'm moving to a different season. So I went from evangelistic to pastoring, and now I'm moving into a season where instead of having the hands-on work, I've got to let other people do what I was doing. And now I have to I'm more in a role of taking oversight. I'm not trying to get another title. I'm not looking for a title. I'm still happy with pastor, but I'm in a mode now where I'm more about oversight, and watching and teaching other people, discipling other people to do what I was doing. And I'm convinced, that that's where I should be now. That's what I should be doing now. I'm convinced of that. So the Lord moves you through seasons, and the Holy Spirit confirms or gives you an unction that's what you need to be doing. And throughout the seasons, there are people. When I was in the evangelistic mode, there were people that were very valuable and to me, and I was valuable to them. We were on the same page as far as that was concerned. And then when I moved from there to pastoring, it was almost like there was a new group of people that were edifying to me, and I was edifying to them, and we were, had the same mind, that kind of thing. And now, as I move into this area of oversight, it's like there's a new group of people that tend to be valuable, in my circle and me in their circle and that kind of thing. So I understand how time and seasons work together. I understand that, and it makes a lot of sense. So we got about a minute.
No, I like that. I like that. That's good stuff there. And when you allow the Spirit of God to lead you, you can more clearly see those changes as they're happening. And I think that's an important factor.
So when we come back, I'd like to, in those same lines, I'd like to talk about that season and transitioning and from youth to middle age, and then from middle age to elderly. I guess there's so much to talk about. I'm not trying to do an in-depth study of it, but I think that's a good example of how seasons in our lives change, and we have to do things different. But you're listening to Real Talk for Real Men, WBIS Awesome Radio. We're talking about the subject of time, and we'll be right back with you.
Do you need community volunteer hours? If so, then Awesome Radio is an excellent organization to volunteer with. We are seeking self-motivated individuals. You just might discover a new career in broadcast radio. Current openings for volunteer positions: engineer, voiceover, community events. Must have integrity. Must not smoke, drink, inhale, or take any such controlled substances while on the premises and while representing Awesome Radio in any capacity. Must have flexibility of days and times. Must have valid driver's license. Must have own transportation. For more detailed information, 252-756-3137. If you would like to join our family team here at Awesome Radio, the number to reach us, 252-756-3137. 252-756-3137. Yeah. Can you hear us? Can you feel us? Awesome Radio.
Hi, you're listening to Awesome Radio, WBISLP 106.9 FM, Christian inspirational for the family and ministry teaching for practical Christian living.
Surely in the family, God is with me. Surely in the family, God is with me. Surely in the family, God is with me.
Okay, we're back. Real Talk for Real Men. And we're talking about the subject of time. Elder, I know that you have some other thoughts and topics that you wanted to touch on, but before you do, how about just address that transition, that seasonal, thing in our life that moves us from the youth to the middle age. And I know you could break them down to either smaller increments, but then from middle age, and maybe I'll have to talk about the old age because you don't know anything about being old. I know you're an elder, but that don't mean you're old.
No, that's exactly what it means.
So let's
talk. I'm there. I've arrived.
Okay.
I always tell the story of back in the day, we used to call the oldest sisters in the community. It was mom. You know what I'm saying, and the older brothers was pop. Yo, pop. And I remember the day young blood came to me and said, "Yo, pop, minute.
Man,
I've arrived.
that's an eye-opening thing there when you become
Yeah,
what
now
you
I'm
used to
pop.
look
I
at.
was like, okay,
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
man, that's something else there.
But I've gotten there, man. I'll be sitting in November, so I'm not. I understand that it's a blessing, and but when you look at it, it's always been that's the way God has set this up too. The seasons in your life. Um, we learn from the elders. We learn from and what you was talking about. You're at that stage where you can teach. See, because you done been through this thing. You know what I'm saying? Young folks, they're like young folk. They think they know, but there's some stuff they missing. They don't know yet. So you kind of guide them with that. And the smart ones understand it and they'll listen. I think that's one of the things that more so than Ecclesiastes, Proverbs kind of really delves into the
Yes.
understanding. It's important to have wisdom and to listen. But it's stages in your life and that you go through, and I'm sure you could talk about it, from dimensions that I can't. But as you get older, you tend to see things from a different perspective, and that's literally and spiritually. You tend to look at things from a different perspective, and you understand that hey, it's not all this. It's not going to be the same. It changes. And you really got into that in the first part when you were talking about, where you were in the seasons.
Yeah.
In your life. So you might can expound on that a little more.
Yeah, I just remember back in my youth, it was like a carefree thing. You just out there experimenting, exploring everything. You didn't worry about repercussions. You didn't worry about consequences. You had no responsibility. I wasn't thinking about my career. I wasn't thinking about where I was going to go in life. I was just carefree. Every day was you get up in the morning. What can we do to have fun? That was the season, and I think that's a component of life that all young people should experience. That part of the life where you just get up every morning and say, what can I do today to have fun? Now I know there are some exceptions to the rule. There are some people that at a very young age, they become very responsible. Some of them because their families force them to. I don't particularly like that idea. Let kids be kids. Don't make them grow up too fast. And then some because of circumstances, like poverty or like having bad parents, being exposed to alcohol, drugs, that kind of thing, where they also don't get that. They get robbed of that youth where you can get up in the morning and you see the sun shining and you say, let's go have some fun. But I think that's a very important part of life. I think every child needs to get some of that. But then you move from there and then you move into the area where now you got to decide, okay, I got to start thinking about how I'm going to make a living. I got to start thinking about, if I'm going to have a wife and children, how I'm going to take care of them. I got to start thinking about how I'm going to develop myself into a young man that can be a high achiever. So now responsibility starts sitting on your shoulder for the first time after coming out of that season of carefree living. Now the weight of the world is on your shoulder, and believe it or not, there are some people that don't handle that well when they get in that area. It's too much pressure for them, and that's why they end up on the drugs and stuff like that. A lot of them. I know there are other reasons that people end up on drugs, but that era, that season of taking on responsibility, man, that's a tough season. that's when you begin to find out who you really are, or where you're going in life, and that kind of thing. And man, there's so many stories that I could tell about that season in my life. But then we look at, the elderly season, where you get to that season where, you know what, the things I used to do, you know what, I can still do them, but I got to do them different. I got to do them differently. I got to find a different process for getting certain things done. So it's just amazing how they differ. When I look at myself, like sometimes when I look at old pictures and I see myself as a youth, and it's almost like I don't even know that guy. Who is that guy? Or I see myself middle aged when my kids, I married, kids real young, striving to take care of them, pay the rent, pay the bills. And I look at that guy and say, you know what? I don't halfway know that guy no more. Because, now I'm in a season where the kids are gone. You kind of have figured out your finances. It don't mean that you're rich or nothing like that, but you've done it so long now that you've got it down pat. You know how to do it. You keep it, you hold it in the row, that kind of thing, you know how to manage what you got and make the best of what you got. So it's like you're a whole different person in terms of, how you live your life. And if you don't learn how to adjust to those seasons, because there are some people that when they get in that older age season, they don't want to face it. They still want to be, sweet daddy, or somebody. They still want to be able to, to bob and weave and, glide in my stride kind of stuff. And I agree. It was an adjustment, but sometimes it's best to go ahead and acknowledge that I'm in a new season now. Got to do some things different.
That's right. That's right. And understand that it is where it is.
Yeah.
And I remember reading something I know me and the brother had. It was a phrase that said, "Be where you are." That part that you were talking about when you were younger, you look back on it, and a lot of times I know I do, and look at the decisions made then and how they affect now.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Both good and bad. So it's something as you look by. That's why I love Psalm 37. Psalm 37 is kind of like, when I think about that, that's old David talking about, because that's the psalm where he says, "I'm old now. I was young, but now I'm old. And I've never seen the righteous forsaken," that whole scripture.
Yeah.
But what he's saying is, these things I'm throwing out at you now, this wisdom I'm dropping on you now. This wisdom I'm dropping on you now is stuff I done lived.
Uh-huh.
So you need to pay attention to this.
Yeah. Yeah. One more thing that I think is very, very important, and then you can get on to whatever, else you want to speak on this particular topic. But when you move through a season and now you're in a second season or a third season or a fourth season, don't forget where you come from. A lot of people forget what they were like in that season, and they look back and condemn those that are currently in the season that they came out of. They condemn them as if, they didn't struggle the same way when they were in that season. I'm not hard on, I try to be understanding with young people because I was young and I remember what it's like to be young. You know nothing. You don't know anything. You're out there fishing around, grabbing this and grabbing that. You don't even know the stove is hot until you touch it, because you're young. And so whenever I deal with someone that's in another season different from the one that I'm in, I try to remember myself. I consider myself when I was in that season before I try to advise them or correct them as to their behavior in that season. Same thing in the church. Church folks, they're hard on new converts. They're hard on the younger people because they forget how they struggled. None of us came into faith knowing everything. So we've got to be understanding with those that are going through what we've been through.
Absolutely. And that's the first thing that came to my mind, folk, some folk. No, I don't generalize in that, but some folk, they get saved. They've been saved for a little bit. Now they all dressed up, everything. And I've had people that have said to me, "I'm not ready to go to church because those people, I don't look like those folk." You know what I'm saying? And I'm not. And I tell them quick, don't worry about them folk.
Yeah.
Them folk used to be like you. They wasn't always like that. And a lot of folk kind of act like they always been like that. Like they always been saved. And they forget they were out there too. Maybe they didn't do the drugs or the drinking or what, but you was out there.
That's right.
Until you accept Christ, you was out there. So to look down, I think James kind of tackles that, when somebody come in, you want to sit them in the back because they don't dress right.
Yeah.
They probably sit John the Baptist in the back.
Oh man, they wouldn't have let him in the church.
And so we gotta understand, you were out there. So you were in that season. And through the blood of Christ and his grace, now you're here.
Yeah.
And we gotta recognize that and act accordingly.
Yes. It's good to use your mistakes to help somebody else understand the situation and the consequences. But don't condemn them because, look, you dealt with it when you were in that season. Maybe you dealt with it better. Maybe you dealt with it worse. But you still had to deal with it. So you got to let them deal with it, And
I think, what I think too? I think God leads us to people that we can relate to.
Yes.
I believe that. He's got people in all different walks of life. Everybody don't speak to everybody. You might have a lawyer, but he understands the lawyer. Or you might have the guy that used to be on drugs. He understands the guy that used to be on drugs. And I believe that God will lead you and you'll be able to talk to the people that you can relate to and help them.
Yes.
Because you've dealt with that, So I think that's the truth. I mean, we see that in the New Testament,
That's
different
right.
people were sent to different people, Paul could talk that thing. He could go up on Mars Hill and talk to the philosophers. You know what I'm saying? Peter couldn't do that. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
So, we got to...
Yeah, he also went before kings. And had conversations with kings, witnessing the gospel to them.
Yeah. So I think in when we look at this particular scripture, I know we're about to close out. I love this one here. There's a time to keep silence. There's a time to talk.
Oh man, we should have started out with that one. We use up a whole broadcast for that. That applies to everybody.
Yeah, especially the guy that just posted something. Sometimes it's time to be quiet. Yeah, I said it. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, No, I think that's an important deal. I remember when I was in the Y, I remember they always said something like, when you open your mouth, you get involved.
Yeah, you're engaged.
Until you open your mouth, you know, you're not involved. So, but yeah, we gotta know and have wisdom. You know, in Proverbs 4, I forget the verse right off the top. It says wisdom is the principal thing.
Yes.
You know, so get wisdom and understand when it's time to talk. So
I think there are a lot of people out there, Elder, that would say preachers need to understand when it's time to cut the sermon off.
time to do what?
Cut the sermon off and sit down.
Yeah. And you know what? You need to know that. I'm good. I when I'm finished, I'm finished. I'll let you know I'm through. You know, that's all I had to say. You know, but some of them go on and want to preach another sermon.
Yeah. Well, it look like they want to start all over again.
So,
and when they start repeating themselves, saying something that they've already said, and the congregation begin to recognize it, they be like, you need to go ahead and close, and don't keep closing, just close.
That's right.
But sometimes I have seen cases where the Holy Ghost, did get in the midst of a sermon, and a preacher was trying to close, and I can tell that the Spirit was taking them on. And it's good to be able to recognize that. But I know there are a lot of people that wish preachers would know when it's a time to talk and when it's time to shut up. But that applies to everybody. That applies to children. When you look at children, I know in my day we learned that real quick. We learned real quick that you can't just can't open your mouth any kind of way around grown folks, because they would hit you in the mouth. And then when you get out in the street with your peers, you had to realize, sometimes you got to shut up, because the next thing you know, you're going to be throwing hands with somebody if you don't learn how to shut your mouth sometimes. So,
the older you get, the more you learn that.
Yeah, man. We got a minute and to go. Why don't you give us the last word on this whole topic?
Well, I think we ought to remember that first verse. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven.
Yes.
Everything. There's a season.
That's a key word right there. To everything there is a season. So whatever you're involved in, you got to consider, is this a good time for this? Is this a good season? Are we in the right season for this? Because there's some things more powerful than you that can affect the success of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to get done. So I enjoyed you, Elder. Appreciate all that, all that we discussed today on this subject. I know that I've learned something, and I expect to, to benefit from it. And I'm hoping that those that listening and those that will listen later, some people are listening live and others will listen later. I trust that they will be blessed. Real talk for real men. Awesome Radio. We'll see you next week.
You with me.